Last year, I did a major mistake when I preached this Sunday after New Year's, and I asked you all who were here. We had, I look back, we had about 152 the first week after New Year's, so we beat this year. But last year we had about 152 people, and I asked you all who were here how many of you made a New Year's resolution, and 3 people raised their hands. Remember that? And I looked at you all, and I was shocked, and you ruined my whole sermon. I didn't preach that day because I had no more sermon, because I thought more of you would. That's not true either. But only 3 of you did New Year's resolutions last year. And so after that, I did a little bit of Googling, because I thought either you're all weird or there's something going on, and people are not making New Year's resolutions anymore. It's kind of gone by the wayside. We don't make them. And the reason that a lot of people are saying they don't make them anymore is because they break them so quickly. New Year's resolutions are broken within the first 24 hours, typically. I'm making them. And those of you who are really good last 72 hours. If you're really good, you last a week. So these New Year's resolutions are broken so you don't make them. And as I thought about that, I thought about why do we break them so readily and so easily. And it seems pretty simple. It's about control. We don't have control over things. I have a dirty little secret about me that I'm going to share. Okay? Here's my dirty little secret. I was not with my family at New Year's. That's not the secret. They were up at the bunkhouse, and it kind of snowed, and they were up there ahead of me, and I didn't want to risk the travel, and I had things I had to get done, so I stayed behind at my house. So on New Year's Eve, I was alone, which was sad in some ways because I was with my family, but you know how it is sometimes. You get that alone time. And here's my dirty little secret. I'm going to tell you what I did. From 3 p.m. that day until 2 a.m. on January 1st, I laid on what's called the cuddler. The cuddler is a part of my couch that's big and round, and you sit on it and you cuddle. And I watched back to back to back to back to back episodes of a TV show called Breaking Bad. Oh, yeah. It's so bad, but it's so good. Some of you probably have seen it, I guess. It's not a real good show, I guess. It's not a real positive show, but it's a really good show. And I watched them. And as I watched it, I started to create a sermon for today. It was a necessary study, watching all the episodes of Breaking Bad. And as I watched it, I realized something. What this Breaking Bad is about, if you haven't seen it yet, is a science teacher finds out he has cancer, and he thinks it's terminal. And as he goes on, he finds out how costly it is to have cancer. And then he realizes that he's leaving his family with nothing because he's a teacher. And so he decides to go make and sell meth on the streets to make a whole lot of money to give. It's freaking out that your pastor's talking about Breaking Bad, isn't it? Our 20-somethings are going, yeah, man, this is really weird. Are you selling meth? No, I'm kidding. But he's selling meth to make money for his family, and that's kind of what it's about. But really, ultimately, the underlying thing, and he said it, the main character said it in a episode not too long ago that I'm watching. He said this. He said, it's not about anything else but control. There's another guy sitting in there about to have treatments, and the treatment, he's talking about how he thought he had everything under control. He was a lawyer, and he was getting all this new practice and everything, and now he has no control. And the main character says, no, but you got to take control. And it's about control. And I thought about that with other shows, better shows than this really trashy show that I watch. But like even Charlie Brown. Good, wholesome Charlie Brown. It's about control. He's trying to find control in his life. I mean, think about it. The most classic thing that we know about Charlie Brown is he goes up and he kicks, and what happens? The ball's taken away. He has no control over that ball. He has no control over a lot of his life. He keeps trying to have some control. Hunger Games is a big deal. My daughter just saw the newest Hunger Games show, and that's about control. America's Got Talent, even, which is one of our favorite shows as a family. It's about control. There are people, who controls you to get to the next level. Trying to get votes for control. You want to control your career. Control. Everything seems to be about control and who is in control. Well, I had a coffee the other day with Jim Gongaware. Jim is the guy who made our banner stands and our kneelers and all that stuff for us. And he made some crosses for our confirmation class last year, and we'll be making some for our confirmation class this year. And Jim is so great, but one of the things is he's so detail-oriented, which I am too. And he wants to tell me every detail of the whole process. I know every detail of every waking second of everything that he did to make everything that he made here for us, because he wants to share every detail. And so a coffee with him to say I'm making new crosses turns into a 3-hour thing where he shows me all these things about what he's doing to make these crosses. And as he did that, it was quite interesting because he's phenomenal at it. But then he slid across his book and he said, have you read this? And it's a book called The Road to Unafraid by Jeff Strucker. And I said, no. And he said, take it and read it. And I get a lot of those. You often give me books, and to be completely candid, I don't always read them all because I get probably 3 or 4 books given to me a week, and I can't read them all. And I'm not like this person who just goes and wants to read all the time. I have other things I have to do. And I try to read them, and I try to read as many as I can. But this is one in particular that I said, well, it's Christmas and New Year's, I'll do it. I read this in just a little over a day. I didn't put it down. I was just, boom, read right through it. And I have to tell you that I would suggest, especially men's groups, but any group, you might want to read this, or any individual. Jeff is a guy, have you ever seen the movie Black Hawk Down or heard of it? In Mogadishu, Somalia, we sent in troops to capture criminals, of state, warlords who were warring in Somalia, and they were going at each other. And as they were fighting, as they were battling with one another, their people, the children, and there were atrocities just being done that were unspeakable. So the United States went in with our military, and we're there trying to capture these warlords and whatnot. Well, what happened was in Mogadishu, one of the cities, there were 2 warlords going at it, and there was a meeting of some of the high command of the biggest warlord. And so we went in and we heard that they were there, and so we wanted to go in and capture all of them. And we had this intelligence that said, they're right here, let's go get them. And so we sent in Black Hawk helicopters and vehicles, and we're going to extract them and get out. And they had done that a number of times, and it worked. Well, if you saw the movie, which had won a lot of awards, you know that some of these big, multi-million-dollar Black Hawk helicopters got shot down by the thousands. They underestimated how many Somalians were there with weapons, and there were thousands upon thousands of people, and they were shooting them so much. There were so many bullets going at the choppers that they crashed, and so then they went in to get them. Well, one of the guys, Jeff Strucker, was a part of the detail to go in and get these people. And if you see the movie, he's one of the drivers. He had a small part in the movie. He's one of the drivers. Well, if you know anything more about that, you know that 71 Americans got killed during that battle, and hundreds and hundreds of Somalians died. He had gone through a number of those kind of firefights in his life, and he was a super brave ranger. He went through the top training. He was hardcore. But he grew up as a young child afraid of death. He would have nightmares every night about dying. And he'd freak out and cry and didn't know how to handle it. And what he did was he knew there was something different that he had to do. And so he started going to church alone as a kid, 10-year-old kid up till 14 or 15. Just started going to church by himself because his mom never took him and his brothers and sisters never went. And he went. And a young couple saw this kid in church and came to visit him one day and said, hey, we want to tell you about Jesus Christ. And they sat him down, they told him about Jesus Christ, and it made a big impact. And they gave him a prayer to pray. And he thought, oh, this is the way I can get unafraid. And he started praying. And as he prayed that prayer every night, and nothing changed. He still had the nightmares. He was still afraid. Every night, for weeks, he would pray this prayer that they taught him to pray, and it made no difference. It's like many of you come to church and say, yeah, I listened to your sermon, dude, but so what? You come to church thinking, okay, it's going to make a difference, and it doesn't. Well, finally, what he did was he said, okay, enough's enough. I'm going to pray the prayer that I want. Rather than the prayer that someone told him to pray, he prayed the way that he thought he should. He just said, God, I'm going to talk to you now. And as he talked to God, he said, God, I can't handle this. Take it away. Help. And the next night, he He went to bed and woke up the next morning. Didn't have one single nightmare. From then on, never had another nightmare about death. Became one of the bravest Rangers we ever had in the United States. But I want to read to you, and I normally don't read out of books, but I want to read to you this part. It comes out of page 74. It's called A New Day, is this chapter. I soon realized that, he'd now been in the military, and he found a wife and just got married. I soon realized that I had married an incredibly principled, moral young woman. That's why I say every day. Oh, she's not here. All right, y'all can say that to her when she leaves. I knew this from the past, but now I was seeing it on a daily basis. This connected with something that had happened in the spring with a close friend in the Ranger Reconnaissance Regiment, Kurt Smith. He and I were the same rank and hung out together a lot before Dawn arrived. Dawn's his wife. At one point, he went home on leave and returned radically changed. He had turned his life over to Jesus Christ, and it clearly showed. Right away, his language changed for the better, his music choices cleaned up, and his general attitude brightened. He began telling others in the detachment about Christ and what a difference he had brought to his life. It was unmistakable. I had to admit that although I had been declared a Christian for nearly a decade, my daily life didn't reflect it. I looked at the way Kurt acted and felt guilty. Then I went home at night to Dawn and sensed more of the same. The two of them, without lecturing me in any way, were shining a spotlight on my inconsistencies. I was definitely rough around the edges, behaving pretty much the way most young enlisted men in the Army behave. I would lie in bed at night and think, God, I know I'm not matching up to these two at all. And I decided that wasn't right, and I was going to clean up my act. Mike you're a Marine, and faithfully serve. So I would like to give you this book as a gift from me. I think you could take a lot from it. He goes on then to change his behavior, his life, and he ends up being a chaplain. And everybody looks at him and says, you, a chaplain? You're the guy who blows off people's heads. You're the first guy in there in a fight. You, a chaplain. And he started to live life the way he's supposed to. The consistency of living Christian life is tough for us all. And it's tough because we don't want to be controlled. We don't want to give up control to Christ. We want to live it the way we want. We want the Protestant work ethic. We want to pull up our own bootstraps. And if we let somebody else help us, especially some God that we don't touch or feel, well, that's just not right. A lot of you know I love to fish. And I'm a fly fisherman, not as often as I like, but I like to fly fish. And I was in a place in southeast Minnesota that a couple of you have been at as well. And I was fly fishing on my own. I love to go by myself fishing. I go off and I find the little streams and rivers. And I was out there in the middle of this river in waders fly fishing. And I like to do things without reading the instructions. And so yeah, I know you don't do that. But so I'm out in the middle of the river fly fishing in waders, not really ever knowing how to walk in a river, and it's tough because it's slimy and slippery. And I'm out in the middle of this, and it had rained a lot recently, and so it was pretty high, but it's pretty cool, and my waders are up to here, so I'm all right. But off in the distance on this cliffside, a mudslide had come down at some point. And what happens if mud comes into a river, you know what happens, right? It fills it up big, the river rises, and it floods. And so what's happening is the river was coming up like this, very quickly, almost at this rate. And I'm sitting there saying, well, I know what I'm doing. I have control. I can control what I'm doing. And I'm fishing, and it's coming up, and I'm realizing it's getting higher than it should. And I later found out there's this really cool thing. It's called a belt. And if you put it around, it stops your waders from being open so that if water comes in, it won't fill up your waders. Because if you fill up your waders, it gets really heavy and you can't move. So I'm sitting there, and the river is starting to flow over me. So don't ever let me take your children fishing. It's really bad. And the water's flowing over into my waders, and I'm realizing I've got to get out. And so I'm trying to get out, and I'm fighting the river. Everything I have to get out, realizing that it's going to overtake me soon, and it's going to pull me down. And I'm slipping, and I'm pulling, and I'm fighting, and then I remember something that I learned in the bar. The little bar, there's two little bars and a gas station. I'm pointing right at you, brother. There's two little bars and a gas station in this town. That's the only thing that's available. So you go there and you eat frozen pizzas in the middle of your day of fishing. And so I'm sitting there, and all the rough, gruff fishermen are there. And I remember what one guy had said. And he said this, and I thought, I didn't think anything of it because I knew what I was doing. I was in control. But he said this, if you ever get swept up, let it go. Let it go. Let it take you. And I stopped, and I just went, whew. And the river swept me down until a shallow part. I got up, I went, the water came out, and I walked out safe. It's like an undercurrent. If you're in Lake Michigan and the undertow takes you, you're not supposed to fight it. You're supposed to swim sideways and let the undertow take you because it'll go out and then it'll stop. Control. I want to control God. I want to control my life, and I realize I can't because I'm not good enough. I fail too much. But if I let God sweep me away, I'll be swept to safety. Here are 4 verses from the scripture that we heard that I think are vitally important to us. 1, verse 4. And they all ate, and they all ate the same spiritual food, and they all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. Remember, these are the folks who were with Moses right at the Red Sea, and they left the land of Egypt, and now they're complaining because they're at this Red Sea, and they're being trapped by these armies, and they think they're going to die. And they said, Moses, why don't you just leave us back there? We at least had food. We at least had a bed. Now we're going to die out here in the wilderness. Thanks a lot. And they want to take back control over their lives. And Moses said, wait. Christ is with you. They drank from the spiritual, he didn't say the word Christ, but what we realize here in 1 Corinthians, Christ was with him. God was with him the whole way. And they're drinking from the spiritual rock of Christ Jesus. In our lives, we don't drink from that rock. We drink from other things. We partake of other forces that give us control, we think. And Christ is there. We don't take him on. We don't allow him to nourish us, and we don't trust him. Verse 11 says this, these things happened to them to serve as an example, and they were written down to instruct us on whom the ends of the ages have come. All these things that were happening were written down to instruct us. This is not a Bible per se, but it holds my Bible. And it's more than just an instruction guide, but it's there to instruct us. And everything I need to know, I could read and follow. And if I follow, my life will be a whole lot better than it is. But I go like this, oh no, I get it. I know what I need to do. I don't have to read the instruction book. And what happens? I fall. I fail. Miserably. Oh, do you think I'm just this great pastor who stands in front? Well, I know you don't think that, but you look at me and say, well, you got it all together. How many times have I heard that from people? Well, you're a pastor, you have it all together. No, because I fail, I forget. It's right there. And then verse 12 goes on, and this is what I do. Oh, I do it. So if you think you are standing, watch out that you do not fall. I think I got it all together. I'm perfect. I got it. My life is good. My family's good. Fall. I thought I was going to fall. Nancy Vickus was walking out. Sorry, Tom. Hi. Can you see me now? There you go. Nancy Vickus walking out. Sheet of black ice. No clue it was there. Wham! Shattered arm. Had it all together. She was helping out someone else. Just like that, her life is different. Don't get too proud. We can easily fall to temptation and other things. And then verse 31. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. This is the statement I want to leave with you. 2014 is here. For the next 6 weeks, I'm going to take us through a journey where we're going to really struggle with this together. What does it mean to give control over to God? What does it mean to follow God? What does it mean to be led? What does it mean to live the life as a Christian? Not just to pretend, not just to be, not just to sit in a pew. I hate to say this to you, but just because you're sitting here in church doesn't make you a good Christian. It just doesn't. Or it's a step and help, but that's not what Christianity is. So this week, everything you do, everything you say, ask yourself this: is it for the glory of God? Is what I talk to you, Julie, is it for the glory of God? When I ask you to help Michelle, is it for the glory of God? When I beat you in cards, Bob Ruff, is it for the glory of God? My son, how I act to you, is it for the glory of God? Everything we should do, everything we are, should be that simple. Does it glorify God? If not, let's not do it. 6 weeks. Let's grapple with this together. Amen.